Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter. Our guest for this one is Paladin, who has been on an episode in the past, and obviously I do a show with him occasionally. It's called Rescope. That's all you need to know. Right, so what is your good point to start us off, Paladin?
Mine is a little bit more of a spin on the Americas region right now because I feel as though people have been pretty negative about it. But I honestly think that we're in a pretty decent spot as a region, counting North America and South America. And you look at M80's run; it looked pretty solid.
Okay.
To me, I think that the fact that they took down G2 alone showed me that they had some sort of international promise that was waiting to be ignited. And I can't tell you how many times some of these talents on this team have just not had the right environment and ecosystem to come in and play out a full LAN. I'm talking mostly about Swisher, but Malbs finally showed what he's made of, and that made me really excited. I think that Sin is slowly coming into his own as an IGL. I think there's going to be a little bit more time for them to get acclimated, but you're starting to see that there is promise in terms of the Americas, in terms of talent. In North America specifically. And then beyond that, I'm looking at MIBR bouncing back after the RMR failure and winning a couple lands and qualifying for some solid tournaments. Imperial have some good pieces. I think everything barred the whole Furia debacle. I think a lot of rosters are making the right moves to have significant solid pieces on their rosters that I'm more excited about the floor of the Americas region kind of rising right now.
Ooh, well, the Americas as a whole, I'll start with North America. I feel like for complexity, right before we started this one, we just saw this being recorded on May 5th, and Navi just lost to Complexity to secure Complexity a quarterfinal spot at ESL Pro League. So we're seeing that they're having a little bit of a bounce back themselves. Admittedly, I wouldn't say that the competition that they faced to get to this point, other than Navi, was that impressive. Like this heroic team has really been on a downward trajectory themselves. But like Complexity has remained. I don't even know how to really place them because they're pretty shaky to me, but they're almost like just staying hovering around that 10th to 12th spot in the world. Like sometimes I'll say 8th to 12th to give them a little bit more credit. They're like 8th to 12th in the world most of the time. And so, but they're not really like fighting for trophies after the IEM Sydney performance, but they're definitely not just bombing out of tournaments, which is nice to see lately. So I'm pretty pleased with them. For M80, their run itself was just nice in the fact that they took down the teams that they were supposed to. Like they were supposed
Yeah.
to always beat the Sharks type teams. They were supposed to beat the Tyloo type teams in that group. They were probably to me like the 5th best team in their group or 6th best team. And then they ended up beating G2 once, which was a nice little cherry on top of what was otherwise like just them taking care of business in an otherwise kind of weak group. So I feel like with the North American teams right now, it does seem like something is happening that's in the positive on the positive side. I don't really know if I really see any of them contending for titles, but I do like the fact that you bring up the environment. I feel like the fact that we're starting to see talents blossom like Swisher, Rek, and Malbs, who otherwise had just kind of been like bouncing between a bunch of different rosters, or Malbs just kind of being stuck on a sort of dead end Team 1 roster. It's nice to see that now they're getting a chance by assembling their talents who are the strongest in North America to show that, one, they're going to qualify for practically everything that Complexity and Liquid don't have to qualify for. And even if Liquid have to fight them for a qualifier spot, M80 has beaten Liquid to do that. So that's impressive. And then when you talk about South America, I just kind of wish MIBR was at the major because I feel like
Yeah.
they were, for a while, the second best team in Brazil or South America for that matter. But then they didn't get to the major, and it kind of downplayed how strong they were in that region prior to that. But like you said, they won Melbourne. Insani looks like the next big thing coming out of Brazil. I think a lot of us have known this for a while, but it's nice to see him do it at a LAN.
The problem I have with this topic is, first of all, the framing. Like, I died inside as soon as he said Americas, because it's like, bro, first of all, if you know anything about Americans, the second an American team is on top, do they chant Americas? They chant USA, USA, USA. So we all know that if you change it from USA/America, you already have conceded. You know America alone isn't good enough. Now, it's one thing that we've already let y'all on that side of the continent. Get away with the bullshit where you say North America, even though, again, when USA is on top, you call Canada your hat and laugh at them. Even though, by the way, without naff and twist, what the fuck would your region be? If I'll go further, without Stanislaw, you do know you have only that bullshit win of Cloud9. That's it. That's the only thing you've got. That's all you have in your entire history in fucking CSGO. So already it's bad enough you get to go basically crowbar, twists, and Stanislaw and naff into our region. No, thanks, North America. Now, you're taking what... Mate, even Spain didn't take the whole fucking continent. Like, I was taking both of them, like the whole landmass. Just Americas now, like, holy fuck up. Whoop, all right, hello. So that's fucking nice. So what you're doing is this, right? I get the side. If you just make it that the flaw, if you'd have led with that the flaw of the Americas is like legit or whatever, that's not a bad angle, right? But the problem is, there's an obvious reason why the flaw's raised, because the GM is dog shit in it. So the problem is, let's look at the other side. Remember, North America alone as a region won one major, as Cloud9's major in CSGO. South America won three majors in that one region. You do know, by the way, just CIS only got 2 majors because Navi's not a CIS team anymore. So CIS actually has less majors, but their one region's better than any of those countries. Take them all. You can have them all. You can have South America, North America, you can have fucking everything. Have a fucking Hawaii as well. Doesn't matter. Like, it's already that. So you're in a bad, you've actually already conceded with the framing. You're in a bad state of affairs. Essentially, what you've conceded, Paladin, is if I just add another continent, then actually we're not that bad. It's like, oh, fucking hell. I mean, hold the ticker tape parade, then I guess, like the astronauts are back from the moon. And so the problem is, the reason why it's actually not good that the floor's that high is because, let's be real, if we look at these teams, like MIBR's nothing if Insani leaves. What the fuck is Payne if Big Azera leaves? What is Col if Elish leaves? Like, these are only one player, by the way. And I'm not saying, like, you can't take another player. What player are you placing them with? You know, and these teams all drop immediately. So the real problem I have is, as an overall region, yeah, the floor's high. But where the fuck is the ceiling? Like, right now, 0 teams in the top 5. 0 teams in the top 10. Look, realistically, on paper, I think Team Liquid, if you actually let gun to my head, they're probably like the 10th best team right now. They could be. Col, let's be real, I actually think it's actually Fugazi this run. Like, they're not actually like a top 10 team. They're probably like the 12th best team. Well, that's okay. But the real problem I have, and Furia, by the way, I mean, we talked about on almost every episode of every talk show for the last year and a half. Like, they, on paper, if they did it right, they're also, since no one can ever leave, the place you have to bring the players. So the stupid thing is, they could easily be top 5 if you did the right job. So the saddest thing for me is this. If the same point held true, but you had one team, either a Brazilian team, could be Furia, or a North American team, Liquid's the obvious location because of their historical aspirations and the money they're willing to spend. If you had like the one team that was like, say, 5th best and then the same like flaw, I'd be a lot more sort of confident. So I see what you mean in terms of the flaw raising part, but Americas, really? Tell you what, here's my deal for you. It's called skin in the game, Paladin. Keep that motherfucking energy if Col and or Team Liquid ever get good. Keep that fucking energy. Don't ever say North America ever again in your life in Counter-Strike. If Team Liquid ever wins the major, I want you to tweet, what an amazing win for the Americas. I want that tweet to come out your motherfucking mouth, mate. If it doesn't, then I'm going to go back historically, and this point was Fugazi. This good point gets erased from history, and you never made a good point on this episode. But okay, aside from that, it's totally fine. You can have that one. Right, Maui, what is your good point? Maybe like the fucking Northern Hemisphere's on a roll or something. Come on, hit me with it.
That Europe's good. It's actually that Europe's good. It's so rare.
The flaw's pretty good nowadays. I have to say it. It's true.
No, my good is it's on some hater shit. Actually, my good is the fact that it's the fact that my least favorite team to watch is disbanding. Thank God.
They lost their jobs. What the hell? You can't just not watch them. They just lost their jobs. That's a good point to you.
Thank God. No, like literally, I've made it a public statement that I would never watch an Apeks game unless I am literally paid to watch them play. Because after I had been paid to watch them play for a goddamn long time, like leading up to the Paris Major, everything they were doing after that in the tournaments I was working there, I was saying that, man, without Kixan as the in-game leader, when it was sent ENCE is the in-game leader. They played some of the worst Counter-Strike in Tier 1, and that was because their style was just, it was almost like I was watching a rerun of like how Nafany called for Cloud9. If I have to guess, I honestly believe that Sense probably was watching that Cloud9 team with Nafany and saying to himself, that's how I want to call. This is the team that I want to mimic, because their flash assists were terrible. Their trading was terrible. Every round started with a default where all 5 people spread out into 5 different directions. And if you look at all of the tournaments that Apeks was playing, they basically were at the bottom of the leaderboard every single time in T-side trading percentage. And I'm just saying, thank God you're freeing a couple pieces up who could actually make a difference on various rosters. Jacob is probably the kind of guy that so many teams are looking for. Even like, I would even say, like, think of Jacob when everybody's talking about these Yakindar replacements for aggressive riflers. I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't need a North American player to technically take Yakindar's spot. But if you got someone like Jacob, I think he's a lot more steady as a force right now. If you take someone like Nock, I mean, some people have been talking about like Heroic's replacement for Nikados because he's seemingly better with the op than he is, or with the rifle than he is the op. Why not get someone that's a little bit more of a purebred opper like Nock? And then also Stiko, not really a player who I'm always going to think is going to elevate a team, but I actually think that Stiko has been such a great supportive element for them. And when he rejoined Apeks, I actually liked what they were more with him than when he was off of the roster, when they were playing with I think it was who was actually their player? I actually forgot who their player was. That Stiko actually had to. Oh no, he came in for Kixan, because Kixan actually got
when he signed to the other team. Yes.
Yeah, when he signed to Heroic. Yeah, so Stiko actually being the player that like he became, where, I mean, in that style that Apeks called, where it was just like all 5 people fend for yourselves, run off in 5 different directions. I weirdly enough actually was like, wow, Stiko is taking over some of the rounds, especially on his lurks towards A side Ancient. He won some rounds single-handedly for him and Apeks. So I'm interested in where all the pieces land for Apeks. I don't really wish like the worst for anybody, but I'd really be shocked if Sense lands on his feet, because he proved practically nothing to me on Apeks in terms of calling style, in terms of team cohesion. It felt like one of the rare cases where you look at the people like Nock, Jacob, Stiko, and Sausalito, and I was like, this team is clearly playing beneath the sum of its parts. Like, this is well worse than what I would imagine if I see these names on paper right now. And so, yeah, I'm glad that they're done with this roster. I'm glad that we're going to see these players move on. Stiko's the only one that's a free agent currently, and then the rest of the roster is all transfer listed. So they are going to have buyouts, which is unfortunate, because I really want to just see, of all these people, I just want to see Jacob on a better roster. I think he really deserves it the most.
I was really bummed out when I saw Sense replacing Stiko in that initial iteration of Apeks, because I mean, him on Rebels was honestly nothing to be excited about, and he took Stiko's role straight up under Kixan, and I think he was a huge issue for them. And I couldn't tell you how many challengers I would look at this guy and I'm like, there's legitimately no reason for him to individually be there. Then, Kixan leaves, he has to start calling, and then I was like, okay, I guess maybe this works. But yeah, as you said, in-game leading has not been his strong suit, and it was actually hilarious to see Stiko take back his old roles and do so much work with them, qualify to the major, and that I think did a lot of work for them. But yeah, I think it would be nice to have. It would be nice to have Jacob and Nock out in the open, and I would like to see Sausalito kind of return to his old form. He was on this Blue Jays roster before, and I mean, he was a real force to be reckoned with. Very like off the leash rifler, basically able to do whatever he wants. And ever since he joined Apeks, I mean, it was always if he was trying to play Tier 1, it was always going to be obvious that he wasn't going to have that superstar level performance to play within a system like Kixan's. But I do think that if he goes to another looser team, maybe he can provide a little bit too, or maybe moves back down to Tier 2. Either way, I think the core of this team has a lot to give to the international space right now. I mean, sure, Jacob's old, but I mean, this guy is still producing so many multi-frags that sure, even just creating the space and then holding on to it as well. On the CT side, he's just so valuable. I think easily he could slot in for Yakindar and put in some serious work. Internationally, this guy is an absolute unit. But as for Nock, I still feel a little so-so on him. I think that maybe a different system will probably bring him back to that higher level, but I mean, he's got a lot to give too. I think it'll raise a lot of floors of the international space, especially. I think that he doesn't have to necessarily go back to Sweden at all. So I think that, yeah, it's great that this team is actually disbanded, because I don't have to see them at a single challenger again, which would be really nice.
I actually agree with the premise that, first of all, as soon as Kixon left the team was over. Like, the real problem basically was like, it's not that the pieces are bad. I mean, as you said there, it's actually these are all pieces you could use to upgrade other teams. Like, I'll tell you an obvious one, because of Maui saying the day this is recorded, I've had to learn the hard way that you can never essentially tell people upgrade when they think a team just won a match. So no one's going to want to hear it. And obviously after the major, Complexity said, no, that's the changes, because like they have to just kill your dreams. They can't even let you fantasize that the fucking idiots will actually get some good players. Here's an obvious move. Wouldn't you just sign Nork and Jacob tomorrow to Complexity? Doesn't that, like, first of all, you still have two NA players, so you can still go to the NA RMR. Bro, that lineup with Jacob and fucking Nork, like, we're cooking tomorrow. What are you talking about? We could be top 5 with that lineup. Like, that's a banger right there. Nork's a pretty consistent player. As Paladin talked about, Jacob actually has some of the most incredible longevity probably ever in Counter-Strike. If you didn't know, by the way, he basically single-handedly got them, like, the fucking through the RMR. Like, he's unbelievable how good he is for his age. And if you don't know, he never, ever has been the player because of his ego that was like, play around me, make me... He hasn't even attempted that. He really does do like the entry shit that you want or lurk on the outskirts of the map. Like, he's just a guy who like, so, because what's brilliant about him is this. He's that rare player that has the skill set that should be a star, but he wants to be Robin. He actually wants you to be the star, and he'll just do his shit. And actually, look, I'll say there's a cynical reason. I think it's because he doesn't want the pressure. I think he wants to just do his kind of job over here and do his part. And then it's not like your game wins or loses on his back. There's not that many people want that. But like I say, you could improve complexity immediately. You think, I mean, the joke is when you go on the Stickle angle, mate, there's plenty of teams could use a Steeko. Remember, what you want teams that have like skill, but they're missing another element. Like, I'll tell you what, if the Skulls angle doesn't work out, why couldn't someone like Steeko play in a team like that? Pretty sure he'd play any spot you want, do any aspect you want in the game. You've got other players that are supposed to frag out. And then actually, the Kakanito one, or Sasanito, whatever the fuck you call him, if people don't know, he was actually one of the players, I said this on Twitter, that if what I actually heard was recommended to ENCE as a potential replacement when they knew all the top players were leaving to. It was either going to be Heroic or Falcon. In this case, like, he's actually one of the players that was scouted by, suppose it's Snappy, that like did the scouting of all the other players and actually suggested who they should sign, etc. So he's not some random that they picked up just because, like, lol, we have to get someone. Whereas the difference is, I do get the sense that, like, the sense pickup is, I mean, I think there's a bit of a Nordic conspiracy there. I think the fact that Jacob's Norwegian as well and Nork's from fucking Sweden, I think they just know this fucking guy and they were just like, I mean, I think even Nork in my interview was like, it will work out. It'll be good. It'll work out. Like, yeah, but like, who the fuck would sign this person? Like, because in that scenario, what you're saying is he's even comparable to Kixon. It's like, well, that's fucking immediately you've made a crazy statement right there. So I don't know why that's the case. Like, there's plenty of people out there with solid IGLs who can do the job. I mean, one of the things I agree with actually what Valle, the old Swedish AWP legend, said, which I think is bullshit, is how the fuck dare you sign? Like, I believe they signed like new contracts not even that long ago, and then you're all transfer listed and you're shutting the team down. Like, that's by definition a bad faith fucking contract you've just created there. It doesn't matter that it has terms where you can release them and you probably have to pay them a salary. That's irrelevant. When you make that contract, as far as I'm concerned, you, the owner, look them dead in their eyes and you're saying, let's both put our best foot forwards for the next X number of years, and as long as things are like going decently well, we'll stick to it. Whereas what you mean here basically is like, oh, what's that? We don't have a team that can go semis and mid, close it all down. It's like, how can people live like that? Because in the modern day, you have to remember, this is why I really do hope, you at least if you're going to do that, you have the good faith to go, you know what, buyout's very low and or non-existent. Because if you're instead sitting there like, Jacob, 200k buyout, then all you've done is just trap Jacob now. And even if he gets a salary, a player that should be playing, notice all these teams, I didn't really push back on, like, should we sign this guy? Like, you've just trapped a guy where he might be getting some salary, but he's also wasting the last years of that 30-year-old career. Remember, as you see with Crims now in Fnatic, it can't last forever. And that's nothing to do with Crims. He already gave you almost 10 years, guys, as an elite level talent. It just has to drop off eventually for whatever reasons, real life motivation. The game moves on. Maybe here's a crazy one. Maybe eventually you stop giving a fuck when you realize that like really good performance gets you like 9th place, or you, oh, I got 5 more frags and we came 8th and then went home. It's like, motherfucker, I used to literally win tier 1 tournaments that weren't majors and go, I won't bother getting out the seat to applaud you. We'll see if we can win the major, boys. Like, that's a different fucking world. So yeah, I actually think it's It is a team that needed to disband. As soon as you saw the sense lineup, it was never ever going anywhere. Because the problem is, Nork isn't like the 1.30 AWPer. He could be a really good like 1.15 rating AWPer. That's why I say I'd take him over Halzerk. Although actually fair play to Halzerk. He has sort of leveled up his game a bit recently because he knows he's on the hot seat. And as I say, the Jacob one's easy. You pick the player. You tell me if it's floppy or grim. I'll instantly accept the terms and we can have Jacob straight in tomorrow. Also, by the way, here's a very underrated detail. Mega veteran, been in loads of major playoffs, been in semi-finals in something like 3 different teams or something. This guy actually has a mad underrated resume as well as a longevity that extended past a lot of the other great riflers. So yeah, I actually think, first of all, it is actually, in theory, in that sense, good. I'm obviously sad for the players that they're getting fucked over in this particular way, especially if the worst thing is this. What kills me is knowing rumours I hear behind the scenes. Like I've heard over the years, Jacob's had loads of offers, boys. He had loads and he could have taken them. And in this scenario, remember, he was the one who originally started this Apeks project. As far as I know, he probably stupidly was being loyal or thought, like, they're my boys. Like, no, I wouldn't leave like kicks or something. And then you see what happens to you. That's how loyalty gets rewarded in esports, mate. You always have to understand esports is not a loyal business. There's no such thing. If you want to know about loyalty, ask Elise about loyalty. Ask how it worked out with Team Liquid. Not only one is he not in Team Liquid, by the way, he's way better than most of the Team Liquid players. And 2, I've heard he could have been part of the proposed super team and someone fucking vetoed him. Well, you know what? Enjoy skulls, dickhead. The joke is, I would do skulls emoji, but you have skulls in the game. So, game over. Right, there we go. Here is my good point. Are you ready? You're all going to be shocked. But I'm gonna play a little game like Sesame Street. So I want you all to pull up this website called hltv.org. And what you're going to do is you're going to go, just follow my instructions. You're going to type in Eternal Fire. You're going to pull it up. It's a good point, Paladin. You're going to pull up Eternal Fire. In the tabs at the top, listen, we're not on Reddit now, so you're going to use tabs, dickhead. You're not going to just like, you know, when I used to love it when Reddit would post the stats and it would say all time, all matches, and 0 rating. And then they'd be, look at this guy. It's like, tell me again how I don't know Counter-Strike. So, okay, you ready? Tab, LAN, you ready? LAN, year 2024, ranking filter, top 20, and now you're going to click opening kills, and you're going to pick T-side. And now when I tell you this, don't say it, but your eyes should already know where I'm going here, right? First of all, I could have made my point ugly. Eternal Fire's not actually a good team. No, I'm going to make it good. This is what I want to celebrate. XANTARES is actually one of the best mechanical players in the entire world of Counter-Strike to a degree that is impossible to fake. This cannot be Fugazi in any context because if you want to have some fun, check out the tournaments they played in 2024. They played basically all the biggest lands, including the major. They were in the major playoffs. They were at the IAM Katowice. They almost made the playoffs there, right? Look at, you know the number I'm going for already. XANTARES attempts 31.1% attempts. If you don't know, by the way, that would be one of the highest entry rates in the entire world. That is like old school Yekindar at his fucking peak. That is insane. Well, we all know even really great entries are more like, 24% openings. And if you can ever hit that 50% success rate, you are a god entry, right? He is doing a 31.1% opening attempts and he has a 50.8% success rate. Basically, he is Eternal Fire. This guy is actually fucking unbelievably cracked out. And it's mad because if you want to talk about longevity, the reason he's able to actually start turning this narrative around is he's been able to keep doing it for like 9 years. So like, yeah, even if he was a bit more sus earlier and a way more hit and miss on land before, he is a land monster now. Look, you can do that thing with Stown of like, yeah, but what happens in the playoffs? So what happens? Yeah, I'm with you, but here's the difference. What happens every second before the playoffs? I'll tell you what, this guy with an AK runs along and literally opens and wins you rounds. And if you don't win rounds after that, listen, it ain't the XANTARES problem at that point. I want to just celebrate this guy. This is fucking insane. Also, by the way, spoiler, pull up a POV. The eye test's going to check out like a motherfucker. Like, this guy's doing, like, actual frag movie highlights every single T-half. Just check it out. See, there we go. You didn't see that coming. What do you think? XANTARES, actually a fucking monster.
I mean, I'm so glad that, he's finally getting his flowers, at least at the LAN stage. It was kind of insane to see him before in the Space Soldiers roster when you would have these like POVs that were uploaded and you didn't think that they were real. You would kind of just say that this player it might be cheating just straight up. He looks like he's just straight up cheating when you would watch his DMs that he would stream quite often. But I think there was like this huge stigma against him that he would never perform on LAN when he was on that big roster, and he was like there was always that the stigma that he would always be this online player. But he shed that moniker pretty easily at this point. Ever since he's gone on to Eternal Fire, he's been able to carry multiple rosters that should not have worked. He got them to multiple majors that I think that he should not have qualified for. And I think that there were certain situations where I think that XANTARES would have been much better off if he just went back to big or he went back to an EU roster. He could have done loads of work there, and he still wanted to stay loyal to the Turkish fans, I guess, and stayed with that roster. And I think he'd put in a lot of work. But yeah, I think that when I saw him at the major, it felt like he had this renewed sense of like, okay, I can, put the team on my back. Woxic still had a very okay tournament. Wicadia was there and provided enough. And I think that was a huge reason why they have been a little bit more consistent, not necessarily EPL, but just in general this year. But XANTARES truly is the main driving force of it. You can talk about majors calling, and I don't think that necessarily even has to do. I mean, I don't think you can call for XANTARES. I think that a lot of times he's just kind of left to his own devices and he just wins you around. I mean, I can't tell you how many times on a map like Anubis where he's not playing on CT side mid and he just gets you 3 kills out of nowhere, and he should be neutralized to get 1 if it was any other player. But this guy continuously will get you 2 to 3 out of positions that don't deserve to have positions that allow for 2 to 3 kills. So I think that, I mean, it is everything to me. But for me, I'll always want him to move on to an EU roster and do more damage there, because I think that this guy has at least 3 to 4 more years to give.
For this year, it's actually the main thing that's criminal about what XANTARES is doing is that we're not including his name in top 5 rifler
It's never mentioned. Never mentioned.
It's never, yeah, he's not talked about in top 5 rifler conversations, despite the fact that he is such an individual freak of nature. Like, he's seriously, I mean, he puts this Eternal Fire team on his back, and I feel like their vetoing plays into his skill strengths. I feel like they even realize that they kind of have to just go with what he's good at. I feel like with right now, like off the top of my head, like my 3 best riflers this year are probably Donk, Frozen, and JL, just because he won the major MVP practically, but I probably wouldn't include him for everything else beyond that. So like, it's just kind of like a reward. He gets rewarded because he did well at that one event. But if I think of just kind of stretch the longevity just a little bit, if I use a little bit of like bias here and there and just like flat out eye test it here and there, I would probably, I mean, XANTARES it feels like for 4 years he's been like a top 5 in terms of flashiness riflers. In terms of like guy on screen to death time, like if there was, I would love to see time to kill stats. If anybody is on your screen in any sense whatsoever and do you successfully complete the kill, I would be surprised if XANTARES since 2020 is not in the top 5 of that, like against at least, top 30 opposition, because he was farming people when he was on big, he's farming people when he's on Eternal Fire. And we just talked about, or I was just praising the fact that, throw Jacob on a lot of rosters, people would be pretty excited about him. Oh my god, if you put XANTARES on so many tier 1 rosters, first of all, Eternal Fire dies. Like, they have no identity left at that point. They are literally just like dying to even qualify for a Katowice play-in, let alone getting top 8 at a major. If XANTARES is on, like, give me like any top rated team.
Do you want a spicy one?
Yeah, what?
Listen, your boy can fuck right off back to Latvia. Pop him in Team Liquid.
yeah.
Right now, mate.
Hey, I was even saying Jacob for Kindar. I mean, oh my god, if XANTARES is on there, and I know we okay, it feels unjust. It feels unjust because so many times this guy has popped back up. He puts up an MVP performance. Rain on phase. If it's XANTARES for Rain, sure, he doesn't know all the roles, all the positions, maybe as well. But oh my god, the firepower would just make me so excited for what Kerrigan could do with someone like that at his disposal. Because when they're talking about entry riflers, like purebred entries right now, you got Donk and you got people like XANTARES. Because unfortunately, Nico's just not that guy as he was. He's still an incredible player, but right now, Donk and XANTARES right now are carrying the torch for like what is possible and how badly you can carry your team if everybody else falls off a cliff, but you always get 1 to 2 on those entry routes.
Yeah.
Can you imagine him outside on Nuke just popping heads?
By the
having
way, you know, the
free
more
reign
you
to do
think
whatever
about
he
it,
wants.
unironically, because of how insane he is right now, because you've included Fate, there's almost no team except maybe what Vitality. There's like what? He can't be in a Russian team, I'm assuming, and he can't.
I don't know
be on
why he
Vitality.
couldn't be on Vitality. I don't know why can't he be on Vitality? What would you?
Because
I would swap
firing?
up. I mean, I would probably get rid of Mezzi, put Flames in his roles, and then I would put XANTARES in some of, like, it's not 1-to-1 actually, but you'd have to swap up some people. You would have to swap some people. I would try to make it work. I'd say that. I would try to make it happen. I feel like he's an upgrade for practically everyone. Maybe, but Spirit. You wouldn't do it to Spirit.
Any team that you can't speak the language, sure. But bear in mind at the moment, this is why actually the most criminal thing about Eternal Fire is, look, I understand that for them it's cool that you have a Turkish team, but we're in the era when every single EU team practically speaks English. Like, he can just be in these teams. Like, there's no problem. Like, the only reason, as far as I know, it didn't work out in big is they don't want to, they want to go back to speaking German, which they constantly keep doing. So, right, Paladin, what is your bad point?
I think this is mostly because of how I've just been seeing the transfer market being played right now, but it's the mismanagement of CIS AWPers right now in the space. I don't like to see the drop off that I've seen from Zorte on BetBoom. I think that BetBoom roster is horrible, to be completely honest with you. I think they have a lot of talent, but not allowed to show for it. It's exposed Nafany, and it's really broken my heart that Zorte has had such a big drop off, and that he's trying to change his game a little too much. You look at players like Art Frost, who have so much to give off of teams that the promise that they showed on Spirit, and then currently Paravision. I think this guy is a bona fide tier 1 player that should be on a top team, but nobody decided to take a chance. C9 had a ripe opportunity to get him. You know, I'm looking at Deco, Icy. Somehow Dexter is still not on a team, which is just a baffling statement to say when there's so many opping issues across so many different rosters at this point.
Rumor obviously is he goes to Heroic apparently, but we'll see if that comes
right,
to be or
which
not.
I did make up this topic before I saw that rumor, but I mean that would be a nice fix of
it's not fucking who wants to be a millionaire, you know. You could just like message before the show and change the topic. You haven't locked it in. It's like final answer. Oh shit, it's wrong. Like, you can just change the topic. It's all good. But you know, for next time.
Yeah. But and then the last thing is Wrinkle on NIP, and I don't necessarily think that this guy surprised me all too much when I saw him on bait. He was okay. He wasn't anything fantastic. To me, it just felt like they were just looking at the transfer market and they're like, hey, this guy's Ukrainian. We didn't have work with we didn't work with Headtrick. Let's just get this guy. He seems all right, and they're just kind of trying to make it work. And I think that he is just flat out okay. So I just feel like people are making the wrong decisions with the AWPers that are available from that region, be it in the CIS region or be it internationally.
It just seems like for the Eastern European space, I feel like the AWPers there, it's just kind of like a spoil for riches, like a spoil of riches. You just have so many great op talents that they all can't find the perfect fit and perfect home. It's almost kind of like like Danish in-game leaders. Like, are they all in the right position? Are they all performing to the best of their ability with the tools around them or whatever? I mean, that's kind of a faded narrative. I feel like that was probably more the case a couple of years ago when there were so many good ones. But yeah, for Eastern European AWPers right now, I think that, you know, I think we'll talk a little bit more about Dexter. I think my bad point kind of leads into that one a little bit too. So I feel like that'll be interesting to see where he ends up with that one. And I feel like I feel like the best ones have gotten onto the best teams. We got Manesi on G2. I guess we could actually include him. Maybe he could be on a better team even. I guess that's something to be said. Wonderful finding a good spot. I think there's some good and there's some bad here. It's just that there's simply put so many good Eastern European AWPers that some of them are going to have some wasted talent. But unless I think the main thing is that, you know, Fallen said it to all Brazilians in an interview. He's like, learn English. I think all of these Eastern Europeans should also probably learn English, because then they can just get themselves onto some European teams. Because I mean, Torzi's improved as an AWPer, but like I'm pretty sure Maus would not mind picking up some of these other guys and looking at just how much higher their ceiling could be.
There's two obvious things there, just on the Fallen point. So one, motherfucker, like, do you know the concept of skin in the game? brother, how did it work out when you spoke English in teams? How did that work out? Can I pull up the resume, Jamie? What did Fallen do when he spoke English and got paid a king's ransom to be on Team Liquid? Oh, that's right, dog shit. Then also, I'll tell you the reason he says learn English, which, by the way, he doesn't know it, but you actually are like, that is the meme of like, better learn Chinese, buddy. But he doesn't know the memes. He doesn't know it. He doesn't know that, like, we know, he isn't intentionally leaning into that. My joke is, I'll tell you why he wants them to learn English. Because the more of the good players that fuck off to international teams, he can just keep collecting that, stealing that check forever in Brazil, can't he? He'll just, oh, don't worry, after the fucking Furia, he'll be off. He'll follow Coldzera's little breadcrumb trail through the forest. He'll go to Red Canids and fucking, he'll do it all, mate. Listen, as long as they keep signing on the dotted line, that's all that matters. So that's fucking rich as fucking the idea he's saying that. Like, here's the other idea. How about people who are GMs of top Brazilian teams, like Furia, sign good players, speak the language of Counter-Strike? That's a pretty good fucking piece of advice, isn't it? So then on the whole angle of it, the mismanagement, I know what Paladin means, which is Zorti and Dexter are probably two of the most slam dunk signings you could make in many years in Counter-Strike. Dexter especially because we know he speaks English. Zorti, as far as I know, does. And even then, bro, it's the AWP role. Like, unless you're literally on some super tactical Danish team, you're freelancing anywhere with the AWP. And spoiler, the AWPers just watch the crosshair. They're not making fucking sick calls. That's why Device is a genius and was the only AWPer who could ever probably become an IGL while AWPing. Remember, Cadian just wasn't a good enough AWPer. That was the only way he could be in a top team. That was kind of a forced happenstance sort of necessity is the mother of invention scenario. So I actually think the Zorti one, I've pointed this out in the past, but just no one wants to listen when I tell you all. It was going to happen. That EG lineup was real. Elige wasn't joining Call. The whole thing was happening with Jax and with fucking Electronic. And the problem was, like the incompetent cretins that the C-suite of EG were, all fired now, don't worry, they came to do the deal and they found out, what's that? We, a North American org, are about to sign a player from a team that might have connections to a Russian oligarch during the UK and Russia conflict. Abort! And they just went backwards. And the best thing is, I think I know why people have deleted this from their minds when I told them. Because no one wants to believe what the actual reality is, which is Elise didn't go like, nice to be doing a deal with Complexity. I've always respected Jason Lake and wanted to play for a North American. No, he fucking wanted to get Brazilians playing next to Electronic Zorti. Even people, by the way, even Jax at the time was cooking, remember, from that Vitality standard. That was like a spicy lineup. That lineup had like real potential to be like a really top team. So sadly, these both players have been mismanaged. The Dexter one we will get to later because obviously the problem is everyone goes, toxic. It's like you have to play with him, cunt. He's fucking sick at shooting people with the AWP. There's the last point which this ties into. The reason those players have been criminally mismanaged is because right now, if I challenged you, make a top 10 AWPers list, no Russians allowed. Fucking hell, we'd be here for half an hour. We'd be here for half an hour, guy. Like, it would get really dodgy after even 5 names. Like, the joke is Nox probably getting top 5 on that. You know what I mean? Like, it'd get real rough, boys. And that's even with your whole beloved Americas. You can have the entire 2 continents again. You know, you do whatever you want, and that's right. You know, what do you want? So, I agree,
we will never be in that conversation.
They have been mismanaged, especially also because, I mean, this is also why I actually feel like the real thing you need for Zorti at this point in time is this. If what I say is correct, then what you need is, you know how Gambit actually never did sell their team to Cloud9? Didn't happen. Factually never happened. What happened was Gambit sold their team to a Norwegian talent agency, and then Cloud9 signed a Norwegian talent agency's team. I know that doesn't make sense. That sounds like some sort of weird one layer of abstraction, because it is. So what you actually need is, you need Zorti to go to a different CIS team, then everyone can sign him. At that point, like, soon as he's out of the fucking reservation, then he can go anywhere. So I actually feel like that one's an obvious one. The Dexter one we'll get to later because, as far as I can tell, people just hate him. That's it. It's nothing to do with his game. His game is fucking fire. And so, yeah, there we go. Right, Maui, what is your bad point?
Yeah, mine is the downward trend of Heroic, and this is a team that I feel like so many people, including myself, kind of gave some slack to. I mean, I've watched a lot of Heroic from the very beginning of this roster when they were playing the open qualifiers to watching them just flounder in ESL Pro League, losing out to Ninjas in Pajamas in their final matchup. Yeah, this team on paper, you really look at the names and you say like, I feel like I'd say Kixan got overrated from his performance with Apeks actually at the major, but he's still okay. He's still all right. I'm not going to say he's like bad. Nertz I think Nertz is just amazing. I think Nertz is just one of the best riflers in the world. Like probably I'd say top 15 rifler in the world pretty safely. Shush, one of the best roll for roll players. Tessis, we know what he's kind of had to do a lot of the dirty work for Heroic, but every now and then he's good for a pop off. We know that his spray is unbelievable. And then you had Nikodas, and Nikodas was obviously frequently the odd man out on this team that despite sometimes having some pretty spirited performances for them as an individual, he is going to be likely leaving the team. At least that's how all the rumors are shading right now, or showing. So what I didn't like though is that even though there are rumors that Nikodas is leaving, I kind of have to like take this in two sides to this one. One, this team was playing bad Counter-Strike at ESL Pro League, but two, there might be a bright side of that, which is that they knew that they were going to get rid of Nikodas, and because of that, they knew they were going to get seemingly Dexter, and they might seemingly get a real Opper because Nikodas was he just didn't op well. Like he unironically was better with the AK than the op. He actually in this year he had 25% of his kills were with the op and 32% were with the AK. So when you actually include the M4 and the AK, it's like half of his kills are coming with rifles, and still a quarter of his kills were the op. And it's like your team needs an opper. You have a great rifler core already, so you don't need to be doing that. And so now Heroic is going to be seemingly bringing in Dexter, and there's a lot to discuss with that one. But I also think like it was worth drawing attention for me to say that this Heroic teams, in terms of the style that they were calling, was kind of bad. Where I feel like in the mid rounds on T side, one thing I really didn't like is that they called to freeze a lot, and it's like in CS2 especially, I feel like the way that freeze calls work in the mid round, this is like kind of a more meta discussion, is that when teams called to freeze, and this was a problem with like the blameF Astralis too, they would kind of like all be isolated in different areas. What used to be in CSGO an advantageous position where you would just stand across the map and play to punish, it's not necessarily as strong in CS2, and I still think Peeker's advantage is still a bit of an issue in this game where if you do peek into an angle, it is still nice for the guy that's peeking, even with the slight network adjustments that Counter-Strike or Valve made for that stuff. And so if you're just holding like Nertz did, like Tessis did, like Shush did sometimes, they would still, you could play to punish, but it wasn't as strong. And if you don't have that op presence on the T side especially, well, now your rifle round is coming apart by the seams because no one was playing to punish with the best gun at holding in the game, which was the AWP. So I'm like, one negative about Heroic and kind of their mid-rounding with Kixan, but I'm also positive because it seems like there is a solution right on the other side of this event.
I mean, it was very clear to me that I think it was going to be a tough ask to make this team work out the gates, with Kixan being a new IGL, Saw being a new coach in the system, but they somehow made it work. I think I had my reservations about Tessus in this roster specifically, but I think he rose to the occasion pretty quickly, and to me, I feel like he's a staple, and he should remain on this roster. And even same goes for Nertz. Under a new system, he had a couple hiccups here and there, but now he's much more consistent. I think he understands his role a lot better. Sometimes he knows that he has to win the game for the team, and he can do it. And it was very clear that the only thing stopping this team from reaching a ceiling in my eyes to it's like a top 5 contending for titles type situation was Nikodas. And I mean, it was simple, just like post up situations where I can't tell you how many times on the CT side we're just holding an angle and he somehow just misses the shot, and I'm just baffled as to how he's able to miss some of these. And then you switch it over to the rifle and he's totally fine. He actually had so many impactful clutches and afterplants with rifles, surprisingly. So I think Nikodas will continue to farm in like tier 2, and that would be a great spot for him. That Prezi roster for him was like legitimately the perfect place for him. I don't think that he could probably go any further than that. Maybe an odd qualification for a major here or there. But I think Dexter being added into this equation gives them a new complexity to their game, because as I'm aware, he used to call for himself a lot on OG, and I could see him actually having a lot more impact in rounds just off of the T side, off the CT side, just calling for these opening plays that just makes them a much more complex team to read. And I think that makes for just a more exciting Heroic, let alone, I mean, his individual skill is always there, and it'll always be something that I have an expectation from. But it's more so that like the fact that it adds an extra dimension to the roster, that brings me the most excitement for him specifically to this one. Because, I mean, I'm seeing players like Tessus, players like Nerds who are willing to take opening engagements. But sometimes I would like my AWPer to try to flex his muscles a little bit and start to exert a little bit more pressure on their own. And it leaves for the rifle corps to have a little bit easier of a job to scale and take map control. So I mean, it's going to be a slam dunk. I think that people will always say that, he's going to be a toxic like player to play with. But at the end of the day, man, I mean, I want somebody that on this team that is very willing to kind of put his dick on the table and say, like, I will just win this game for you. And I think he's the ideal player to do that. That's what this team needs. And I think that he checks the boxes like pretty much every time.
Well, I actually did have a take later about Dexter, but I'm a professional. I'll work with it here and just move on the fly. So one thing I'll say is this, which is Heroic isn't a bad team. Like, the craziest thing, I made this point on Twitter, is go look at all 3 series they lost. They could have won every series 2-0. Literally, one of their problems is, this is what cost them a playoff spot at the major, they're just bad in close games. Like, this is the team, if it's like a 11-11 game, bet the house on the other side. Like, they're going to lose. Like, they'll find a way to lose. And one of the problems I think they have, it's actually one of the rare times it just shows up in the stats and slaps you in the face. Just look at their fragging on T side. Right? This is the problem they have, guys. In CS2, you can't have those like min-max rosters that I loved from CSGO, like the ENCE rosters, where it's like you can have sort of like 1.75 stars, and then the others just fit their roles, and the IGL calls a really great tactical game. You've got 30 rounds in a game. You've got a nice long T side. The economy wasn't as mad back in the day. You could get a lot done with that, and essentially it's more like if you sort of get the stars in the right positions and the right duels, you can find a way to outmaneuver, outflank, and then get the kills you need, and you can win the game. That's one thing that a lot of people love. First of all, not the map pool for that, not the format for that, not the fucking CT economy for that either, by the way. And also, like, basically, even though, yes, you punish the CT economy with Ts, if you don't get the T kills, the CT economy gets out of control. Heroic's one of the teams that make the CT side look really good in a game where right now CT's really fucking damaged. It's really bad. They don't frag enough. And one of the reasons why is if you look at their roster, this is where I actually am going to give really high marks to Saw for roster construction. Because if you don't know, he was trying to get Nerds, Sunpius, and Madden into this team. And if he'd have had those pieces, by the way, we don't even need to have this conversation. Like, we're already talking about Heroics, like, the 6th best team. They're working on, like, can they become like can they challenge for like a dark horse to make a final or a semi? But his problem is, Sunpius, you've heard the joke, but it's what I've heard. He was given what's called Heroic, rather, for Sunpius was given what's called the dickhead tax. A bit like Astralis gave Heroic Heroic gave Astralis the dickhead tax, where you've fucked with us and you've annoyed us. So if you want to sign this player, costs $1 million instead of, let's say, I don't know, 500k or 600k. You do that where essentially it's prohibitive, so you're not going to do it at that point in time because you're spending money. So the real problem you have is the Nikados angle for Maui. I noticed he never at the end said something like, so remove one of the others and keep Nikados. So why didn't you say that?
Wait, what? No, I'm not. I would remove Nikados for sure.
Okay. So all I'm saying is that you can, essentially, if what you're saying is don't throw him on the trash heap and CS. He doesn't have to leave pro teams. He can go and be a Gamer Legion or something, right? That's okay. But on this team, here's the problem. I see people all day long on HLTV say Shush is a bot, Tess is up and down. The problem is, this is the dumbest part. Nikados, it's not even the Dexter angle. You can have plenty of AWPers coming in. It's the most slam dunk removal I've seen in years, boys. Because if you take him off the team and you put in, it doesn't have to be Dexter, the rest of the pieces are fire. Like, Dixon actually pretty good IGL. Tessus does his job completely now. Actually, by the way, kind of actually overcome all the criticism of was he Acadian? Probably isn't. He just does his fucking job. Shush, definitely a very solid anchor. Brilliant personality piece. Also, by the way, never caused a problem as far as I know in the teams. Nerds is like really good. And this is what you have to always remember about Nerds. You know how you might notice this, I don't ever bag on Mouse for not doing anything in the playoffs because they're so young as a core. Like, that rosters hadn't had that many times. People always forget this, Maui, and they make that IEM Rio run just this lineup. Like, they make it like they've been doing this for 2 years. They haven't. They got this like Impact only joined at the end of CSGO, guys. So I give Mouse a bit more time. They're not at the status that Heroic at the end of CSGO, where it's like, right, it's time to shit or get off the pot. You've already won Blasts, guys. It's time to win the major, right? If you are nerds, he only joined fucking ENCE in something mad like February 2023. He's actually tracking very, very well. I'm with you. He can be up and down because he isn't like peak era Nico. Like, guess what? Not many people are, including Nico right now. So I actually think if you do, this is why the Dexter one, I think it's such bad timing for everyone who's hating on Dexter right now. Because one, he doesn't even need to be the Dexter he was an OG. But if he is, you're going to eat your fucking shoe because the rest of this lineup is straight fire. And shall I tell you a counter narrative for the Dexter is toxic angle? If he was toxic in a dog shit team like OG, where everyone else gets depressed and has career tanking numbers, and they never even had a great IGL after Alexi B left, I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. That means his flaw means he can perform in any team, any fucking team. If you've ever seen that guy's POVs, he just hits all the AWP shots. Oh, and what's that? He also wins loads of clutches. Like, he doesn't even need to be that guy. If you just bring him in and he can competently AWP. Remember, he can even start out slow. This team is going to fly. They already aren't even bad. It's just the problem is T-side, I don't think they have the weapons right now. I think it's an obvious example of where you want Nerds and another star. And if the other star's the AWPer, isn't that what everyone wants in a roster? I actually think low-key, Saw's going to look like a genius after this move. And also, even if like the story, let's say behind the scenes he's still toxic. Spoiler, Simple's always going to be toxic. It's who he fucking is as a person, right? But I'll tell you what, if they start flying as a team, we're all going to call Saw a genius and we're all going to claim he like rehabilitated Dexter. Get ready for that narrative in 6 months if he joins. So I think it's whack, this whole thing. I don't know why people are doing it. I even think right now, it's the reason I don't give up on Falcons, boys, because I think the same thing with Falcons. Falcons just doesn't have they don't have the Nerds, and in fucking Heroic they don't have the Sun Pius. By the way, literally because neither team could get them. I've heard Nerds couldn't go for the social reasons, and fucking Sun Pius couldn't go because they got fucked off and he went off with Snappy. So both of these teams are like one piece away from actually being pretty good or starting to get good. So yeah, I agree. The Heroic angle is like, they're not in a great spot right now, but they really could be. This is one of the only, normally when people go, they're one move away. Spoiler, complexity is like 2.5 moves away. I don't care what match they just won now. This team is literally one move away. Like, you give this team one move, they could win a blast.
Okay, so if we're gonna do Dexter takes now, then I would like to say that, like the thing with Dexter is that I love to jump on something and make a prediction right away. It is a long time since Dexter has last played an official. The last time he played an official was May of last year. So it's been a year and we haven't even seen him in CS2. And we know that certain AWPers have fallen off not a cliff, but they've definitely gone down maybe 10, 15% in terms of performance. If Dexter can reclaim what he had though at the end of what he was doing in CSGO professionally, this team will be easily a top 6 team in my eyes, top 7 team at worst. Like, they're already so close. They're not playing with a real AWPer. They're playing with, again, like you went through the players already, and I really just want to say, like, Nerds is really nasty. Like, in terms of like the beginning of this Heroic lineup, there were some chemistry issues. I still think that the way that they like to play in the mid round is not really ideal for how a lot of teams like to play. But if they do have an AWPer, it's going to remedy so many of the problems. It's kind of like the same issue I had with Cloud9. The thing is that Cloud9 to me had a higher ceiling. If they replaced Hobbit or Axile for an AWPer when they needed to, I thought they could have started winning trophies. I don't know if necessarily this Heroic team is going to win trophies with Dexter, but are they going to make playoffs of everything? I would say so. I don't see any reason that they wouldn't make playoffs of everything when they were one win away at practically this event from making at ESL Pro League for making it to the playoffs. I don't know. They were one win away at the major for making it to the playoffs. Like, they're going to be top 8 consistent contenders, and they're definitely going to steal a couple series from like an underperforming G2 or some team that's maybe choking on a big stage, because some of these guys are actually, they've proven it on stages. We've got Tessus and Shush, who weren't always the best thing that was going on at Heroic in big stage moments, but I think we were mostly pointing the finger at Stown for like the biggest drop off in performance from group stage to playoffs. I think Kixan himself showed that making it to the semifinals of the major, he doesn't have the worst time calling, and he did that against Liquid in the quarterfinals of Paris, by the way. And if we have Dexter, I mean, Dexter's already done good stuff with Spirit before in the past. I mean, this guy, even though the toxic stuff surrounds him, and like, the thing is, and one of the reasons that like I kind of had to harp on that topic, just on streams at least, is that a lot of people will come into my streams and be like, what's the problem with Dexter? Why is he not on a big team? And the only thing I could say was not performance related. It was the fact that people like Patsy, who, by the way, where is Patsy right now? And some of his ex-teammates from Dexter just had negative things to say about how he wanted the team to be run around him. But for me, I feel like that would be a blessing in disguise for Heroic, because I feel like they could use a little bit more guidance. I think if anyone else talks in that roster, I think that's a blessing, because you know, you probably get little sprinkles of voices from people like nerds, like maybe he wants to do a little something. Shush, Tessus, you know, they knew some of the things that Cadian liked to do, so maybe they'll bring that into the fold. But Kicksan's putting on a lot in terms of load on his own shoulders, and if Dexter can just alleviate any of that, saying, boss, I'm gonna get you a frag, let me go ramp this round, and he does it, okay, cool. We can stop worrying about that side of the map as much, because I'm going to tell you this, Nikadas wasn't doing that. Nikadas was not finding those kills. He was not, if anything, like, Nikadas would probably have to add, like, hey, Saw, can I get an AK this round instead? Saw's like, Nikadas, you have the money to opt. No, I'd rather rifle. Okay, and then they just were doing the best with what they could, which was having 5 riflers. And man, we were so critical about Cloud9 for so long. It's like sign an opper. It's like that was a self-imposed pain that we were watching from this Heroic team, because their opper just decided, I don't want to opt that much anymore.
I'll just say, if people are going to use inference to say that Dexter's like flawed as a player, I'll just throw this out there. Every fucking fraud now is going to tell me Wonderful's amazing. Why was he on Sprout? I missed something. He can speak English. Like, why did every team in Europe not want him? Like, by your logic, guys, probably secretly a piece of shit, right? No, guess what? Spoiler, the reason why inference will never work in Counter-Strike is, have you seen the motherfuckers who were GMs? Again, can anyone even name 10 GMs? I don't think so. Like, the people who are literally signed these massive deals. Like, it's why the Team Liquid one is ridiculous. It's why I always say to Zeus, like, mate, it better work, because at the end of the day, like, there are going to be 1 million players who come along between now and whether this lineup ends that for 600k you could get instead of skulls. Like, you paint yourself in that corner, mate. Like, there's a lot of teams don't have 600k to spend, and you spend it on skulls. So if you do that, look, it's great. As long as you get your Kindar going and you get Naff and Twist Soul, like Acadian's excellent, it'll work in the end. But at the end of the day, that will be the albatross around your neck, which is, it won't just be your sign score. It's for 600k. So, okay, here's my bad point. It's a similar one. It's another one where people are going to tell you it must be because he's flawed. No, this is where narratives kill players dead. They really do. Because you want to know the saddest thing that'll connect to what I just said a second ago? You know those general managers? It ain't just commentators, mate. General managers care about Reddit narratives too. They buy community hype. It's one of the reasons I think Falcons have fucking Dupree right now. We're going to actually all lie to ourselves because we love Dupree and pretend he's like a HLTV top 20 player. In fact, worse than that, in the spot he's in, he basically should be a top 10 player. And then we're going to go, but because he's not the worst, in fact, he fragged out. That makes it, no, he doesn't. What that does is he's never going to be the Nico, the Nerds that you wanted. Even worse, he's not even a bunch of these other players. Like, you know what? So here's the angle for my bad point. I've been sniffing around a little bit and trying to see what the transfer market is like. Like, who is considering this player? And it's fucking bumming me out. Because you know blameF, if he comes back, boys, it's probably going to be for a low tier 1 or just a tier 2 team. Or he's not coming back. He's just sitting there waiting for the contract. And by the way, remember, him and Device, I think, signed till 2025 or something. I think that was like the move that was done when they cut a bunch of the players, right? This is a fucking bummer and a half. This is why people don't have an eye test and don't watch Counter-Strike. So let me see. Dexter, eye test checks out like a motherfucker. He's toxic, can't sign him. Oh, well, my bad. I guess I'll just look for another perfect AWPer. Oh, there aren't any. Sorry, there's like 3 people in the world who can do that, and they're all in the best teams in the world. Well, we shall look then. Then let's go down. Oh, what's that? I want to sign some player like blameF, who consistently produces, no matter what you think about his role or what you think about his calling. Forget his calling. He proved he doesn't need to call to do it. He did it all with Glaive calling. He is one of the most, like Dexter, he's one of the most slam dunk production players in the history of Counter-Strike over the last, 6-7 years? Like, put him in any lineup in Astralis, he produces. But what do they tell you about him? Remember, no, you've never heard a single person say he's toxic. Too passive. And it's like, oh, my mistake. Oh, sorry, my mistake. Let me get another one of those riflers who plays lurker role and basically always produces numbers, but is also quite aggressive. or they're all the best teams in the world and not available. God, how many times do we have to do this? Instead, we're signing Skulls for 600k. We're signing Fallen for 700k. We're doing these mental signings that don't make any sense while these players sit there gathering dust on a shelf. And you know what's worst? Like the Dexter point that Maui made, give this guy another 6 months, and you know what the next point against him will be? Hasn't played for 9 months, has he? I don't even know he's any good. And eventually you'll have all talked yourself out of a player that if you ever had an eye test, it's a slam dunk. Every single time I ever say on Twitter, this guy is a guaranteed frag. Lurpis, because it's just who he is as a person, has to go, yeah, but he's very passive. It's like, Lurpis, you played as a fucking IGL. If you don't know what's hilarious about the Lurpis one is, he had one of the most passive 1.6 players ever to play Counter-Strike. He was called Conte from the Finnish scene, but because he was amazing in clutches, they pretended his role was clutch player, so they allowed him to be super passive. Do you know why those players work? It's the other way around. You know, people think it's baiting, right? Brother, how do you bait on the CT side of the game? All the blameF highlights you're thinking of aren't him on T side, like Happy sitting in an angle, shooting 2 people as they save the gun. It's on CT side, he murks people with the rifles. He's fucking unbelievable, right? That's not called baiting. That's called he holds his angle and shoots 3 people when they come into it consistently in a spot that's supposed to get 1.5 kills. Like, I agree. I wouldn't have him on like fucking Falcons. That doesn't make sense. But if I had a team where, I'll give you a few examples, the following teams, I would sign him to them in a heartbeat. G2 Esports, ENCE, HEROIC, Complexity. All of these teams, he can have his spots, he can have his roles, and if he produces, and I have to say, history says he will, all of these teams are better. And you know the reason I also picked all those teams? They all have the aggressive rifle that you need. Or they have the AWPer. They would all be better tomorrow. So the idea that this guy actually, it's looking bad right now. It's also one of the reasons I wanted to make the point on this show, because spoiler, if you're out there and you're some dickhead thinking of signing Skulls for 600k, this guy's available. I can tell you that sort of money, you can get this guy. You can get him into your team. And by the way, like the point about Saw with Dexter, in 6 months, if you sign him, you'll get to pretend, like with Wonderful in Navi, and like with Dexter eventually in Heroic, you'll get to look like a genius. You'll get to have everyone back on the back and go, yeah, it was obvious you should have signed it. I always thought he was great. I thought he was great. The same people say too passive too, but I don't even still, the thing I've never understood is this. I've always been a critic of blameF the IGL. As far as I know, if you ever saw the interviews this last time in Astralis, they asked him if Glaive leaves, or we cut Glaive, can you be the IGL? Notice how different that is from I want to be. He didn't do a Yakinda as far as I know. He didn't go put me back in that hot seat. What he basically did, that's stupidly by the way now, don't ever trust Astralis. Don't ever turn your back on fucking Nicola Nihol Momi. He trusted that like by taking that role, they'd do right by him. Well, guess what? That fucked his career. I think if he'd have just stayed, by the way, in that other spot, they don't sign Sound. And by the way, you're all going to laugh now. Sound's amazing. Sound fucking doesn't exist in playoffs. blameF might not be the best player ever. Tell you what, he turned up in playoffs though. So I think I cannot, just like Dexter, I can't conceive of why we're coming up with reasons that aren't about how they play CS as to why we're not letting these guys play CS. I think this guy's fire, mate. He might not be like a top 5 rifler, but if he isn't, he's a top 10 rifler. How about that?
I feel like the term bait has been warped over time for just specifically because of this player, which I don't think is his fault. I don't think he is a baiter by any means. Yes, he plays T sides very slowly, but I mean, I never felt as though that should be necessarily a liability. He's been such a stud over over 2023 that it felt like I was just waiting for the signing to come in. It was supposed to just be a surprise, and then he would be on a top team. But I mean, that really bums me out that it's not a possibility, because
just at the moment,
which I'd hope that hopefully the narrative can change over time. And I think, yeah, if Reddit can take away a player's career, why not give him one and try to start the narrative somewhere? But yeah, I think that it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't really have much to add, because I completely agree. I think that blameF is absolutely a top 10 rifler and always will be. But I don't understand why you wouldn't want to just give him the space that he needs to work, because any of these rosters work. He doesn't have to be an IGL. I honestly think he'd be better off if he isn't one. And I think he made peace with that himself after he left Complexity. I think he was pretty okay with just saying like, I don't want to deal with that anymore. When he joined Astralis, I think he had a couple of streams as well where he was just like, yeah, I'm not calling anymore. I kind of don't want to be, and I thought we would have left it at that, but it looks like that has just kind of tanked everything about him.
blameF is like, for Redditors, ROPS is flirting and blameF is harassment. They do the exact same
Okay.
shit. They do like
true.
ROPS just is a vicious baiter too. I've seen ROPS not rotate from his lurk position in TAP's Inferno as the opponents are retaking the B bomb site because he thinks there's a kill towards A. Like blameF does similar stuff, and some reason like people are okay with it. It's like Redditors for whatever reason are okay with JKS and they're okay with ROPS, but they're not okay with blameF. They all bait. They all do the same thing. They all have the same flaws on T side. Sometimes they're a little slow. That's kind of by nature of the role. And like you can hate like blameF for doing it, but you better keep that same energy towards ROPS. You better keep it towards Spinks lurking out mid on Vertigo for Vitality when he's coming out like 30 seconds too late. Like people just decide for whatever reason to just like pin their blame because blameF looks like a schoolyard bully, and they want to actually for whatever reason just say blameF is a baiter and he's not playing winning Counter-Strike, when it's like you're totally right, Thorin, that his CT sides are masterful. Like he's playing high impact, high like positions that need to hold space, and he's doing it and multi-fragging consistently. Like blameF is legitimately one of the most misunderstood players by fans because it's the same fans who are a vocal minority on Reddit that are saying give Nealon his fourth chance when he has shown absolutely dog shit results, and they're saying blameF is not playing winning Counter-Strike. Like people have such a bad perception for what is winning Counter-Strike at this point that it's not worth reading the comments so often, other than the fact that it fuels content like this, because then I can bring up how dumb people are in these kinds of shows. It actually you guys actually by writing bad comments gives me something to talk about. So I actually thank all of you guys who are upvoted on Reddit despite having horrible opinions. I love going through your guys' stuff. You guys make my job easier because it gives me things to talk about, because it's almost like I would normally have to create straw men. Well, you guys are the men. You guys are the straw men. Like I actually don't have to make up arguments anymore, because people legitimately think blameF doesn't play winning Counter-Strike, when it's like the reason that he wasn't like I also think like people don't understand like the whole bro for blameF thing. It's like blameF really got weirdly scapegoated because his calling wasn't good for Astralis. It's fair to say that. Other than on Ancient, I feel like the calling was very flawed in a lot of ways, and the way that they tried converging on rounds kind of gives me like similar vibes to what HEROIC are doing right now. It was just too slow. It was too much playing to punish, and even though that kind of style, I think sometimes blameF took his individual skill set and put that onto every player on his team and said, okay, everybody wait while split up and play to punish. And these were the complaints I had with Astralis' T side. It was just that they would do that. The CTs would then re-aggress in a position with like a flash or a double push, and they would gain either information or they would get a kill back into the round. And sometimes the mid-rounding got really out of hand for Astralis because now you've lost ground, even though you probably should have just converged a little bit earlier. All of that being said, for blameF not to get onto a top 10 team is flat out, that's inexcusable for this space, except for the fact that I imagine his buyout is absurd. I imagine that Astralis have him by the balls right now because they're just holding him with this incredibly just outright despicable contract. I have to just assume that, because I assume also in another way that Bro was much cheaper than blameF, and they could have signed Bro while putting blameF on the bench for a reduced contract payout, because usually it's in your contract. If you're on the bench, you're getting a quarter from like a quarter to half of your normal salary. I bet you in that window of the money saved for this team, for Astralis, they were able to afford not only Bro's monthly salary, but even able to potentially buy him out of a team like Monty if it was a low buyout. So for this guy not to be competing right now, I mean, I'll even go a step further. I feel like for someone like JKS to not be competing right now, also, like, he played winning Counter-Strike at his best. I feel like both of them should be on rosters right now, and for them to not be it just shows, like, the state that this space is in, and why, unfortunately, contracts and lack of guarantees and everything like that have really just kind of ruined what could possibly be, like, the best space in such an open, free market. But, like, nah, we just have to, like, chain and shackle players.
By the way, on the point you say there's also two contract-related reasons. One is, like, yeah, you're probably right. Because I'm going to guess, by the way, he's one of the people, the rumour was, that was on massive salary. Him and Device were obviously the two you signed for $1 billion, right? Because that was who you were building around. Then the second factor is, when you have to pay the dickhead tax to fucking Heroic to get down, You're not going to sign him and then throw him straight in the bin. So I'm sorry, blameF was sacrificed to allow Stown to have all his roles. That's just clearly obvious. Like, when blameF was there, Stown was not a fucking top player. Now, magically, Stown's popping off again because they just gave him the fucking spot. So I also think, by the way, what a disloyal fucking org Astralis is. I'll just put this out there. Do you remember when blameF joined Astralis with config and immediately carried the fuck out of that Blast Finals LAN? What the fuck would this team be without him? You remember that IEM Cologne run they made in 2022 where they made top 4? That was all him. That was all. It wasn't Glaive calling. It wasn't fucking config. It was just all this guy. And then also, I'll just throw this out there. In order to tell me he was never good, guys, welcome to the dark side. You've just admitted the HLTV top 20 is fucking fugazi. Because are you ready? I'm about to read off 4 numbers. So in 2020, he was number 6. In 2021, he was number 13. In 2022, he was number 12. And in 2023, last year, 5 months ago, he was number 16. The lowest he ever was in a 4-year span was 16th at the end of a year in Counter-Strike. So either something enormous happened in the last 3 to 4 months. He wasn't even bench, it was like 2 months. In 2 months, something insane happened. Or you all think that the game will restart and the HLTV top 20 is fraudulent. It's just for noobs who watch stats. Which is it? Because I'm told all the time I'm a hater if I say that. I'm told that that is the best minds in Counter-Strike looking at you don't know how to interpret stats, Thorin. Do you want to know the irony? I'll do a little plug here. On my side channel, I actually interviewed someone whose literal whole career, he's like a 50-year-old man, is in statistics. And he says that I have actually, through completely parallel intuitive means, stumbled correctly onto the approach to statistics. And statistics can never tell you an answer. They're just a bunch of algorithms sorting numbers into a list, and essentially the list, by what order you do it, you decided that beforehand in order to create the model. So if you created the model, how could you then say the model now tells me which is better? It doesn't. You told yourself which is better. You decided what the metric was. So the weirdest thing of all time, and by the way, I can tell you one of the reasons, if you want an argument, I don't believe it, but if you want an argument as to why blameF is a fraud and he shouldn't have been top 20, it's the same as James, isn't it? I'll guarantee he's killing the fuck out that KST score. I've always, you notice I never ever use that. Have you noticed I never reference the KST score? I'll even sometimes reference impact rate. I don't even think that's that terrible. I think it can sometimes be a bit skewed. The KST one just rewards fuckers who do bait and who do save, by the way. It just does. It gives you like a stat as if you did something, whereas actually sometimes you're doing the opposite of something. So I don't think it's the case. I think there's a middle ground. I don't think he was ever actually, he was never like the 3rd best rifle in the world for me. That was always too far. But the idea he's not even top 10, and also the reason his numbers have tanked if you're a stats watcher, it's because they made him IGL. And also, remember the last lineup where it was him and Device, then it was like Glaive, Altex, and then fucking Borup, or Boz and Borup, or whatever. Get the fuck out of my face. Like every other player thought a shit lineup is supposed to be a monster. So I just think this whole thing's crazy. So okay, let's do the ugly now. Paladin, what is your ugly? This is really ugly, so hit me with it.
I am so upset about the drop off in form of ENCE. I think on paper I was pretty excited about it. Just seeing the cattle run that they had when Glaive was added in, I was like, okay, I mean, they found a way to make something in theory work pretty well. You take this 9 core that works on Vertigo and some maps, and has the chemistry to potentially be a good roster. You take that and then you add in experience with players like Diha and Glaive that knows what it takes to win, and you try to get them over that hump of trying to be successful on other maps that weren't Vertigo, and it seemingly had worked, but now you've had this incredible drop off since then. I mean, they haven't really beaten anybody of significance that I can tell.
Oh, they're bleeding out the asthma, yeah.
And to me, the most upsetting part of it all is seeing the drop off of Diha's performance. I'm seeing conversations where people are telling me that Diha's a bad player, and I'm like, I just don't like. Oh, he was always a bad player. Is what I should.
Oh, right.
And
okay.
that is baffling to me that this conversation has completely just thrown out the kind of pedigree of a player that Diha was, because this guy was a bona fide great anchor on the previous ENCE rosters. He was a huge reason why they were such a stable core. And now you can see that he's a liability for this team. He's finding ways to lose them rounds and lose them games. And that's frightening to me that a player at that high of a caliber has fallen from grace that hard. That you're kind of looking towards the newest additions, and you're saying that like what are we really doing here? I think Glaive's T sides have been really ugly, at least at Pro League from what I saw against Gamer Legion. I mean, they look like headless chickens on Nuke. I couldn't tell you how discombobulated they look in the mid to late round. And that, I mean, you're talking like 30 seconds left on the 30 to 20 seconds left on the clock, and they're like just dropping like outside smokes and starting to scale. I mean, that kind of stuff is just like abominable from a tier one team. And so I think that you look at the quote unquote fixes for this 9 core in Glaive and Diha, and they're honestly the biggest problems that I have for this team. And that just kind of upsets me because I don't even know where they really go from here, to be honest.
Man, the hot take here is the fix for the fix for ENCE is actually very simple, and it's actually it's so shitty. It's that the fix for ENCE is actually you bring in this probably over the hill in terms of individual performance, but actually good at being a glue guy, IGL in Minio, and you get this other up-and-coming Polish talent named Key, because the 9 roster literally played better Counter-Strike than what I've been seeing from ENCE, at least after the RMR. Everything after the RMR has, yeah, it's been pretty despicable in terms of the CS that they've been playing. You're right, the Headless Chicken comment, like, their trading was quite bad. I think, okay, so far because Pro League has ended for them, they had 17% of their T-side kills were traded, which puts them second worst in all of ESL Pro League for T-side trading. And they do just kind of run into random directions. I will say, like, some of it isn't actually, it's not always like they're not playing together. It's just sometimes like little fundamental things like spacing can be bad. Like sometimes they are on each other, and sometimes it's just that they aren't getting that second kill, which I think has something to do with player quality, sometimes just being on the same page, fundamentals like spacing, but sometimes they are kind of like wandering a little bit by themselves. There's a little bit too much wandering, like seeing what they can find in a round. And I don't know whether that becomes from a lack of faith in what the mid-late round call is from Glaive, or just a lack of identity, or they just haven't really outlined what all their finishers are in rounds, because they just don't seem to be too confident in what that is. And yeah, it leads to these kind of really hectic situations in the mid-late round where they just kind of are like still scrambling to put a plan together, which is so frustrating about this narrative for ENCE, because something I liked about them in the beginning is that when they played with Glaive, it really did feel like what he brought was a cohesion in the mid-late round. Like I remember some vivid rounds where, especially on like Ancient, where they would play the round and they let the opponents play themselves. Like they would kind of hang back in groups, and they would know that the opponents are likely to now spread their defense kind of thin, or maybe even push up into the group that ENCE were into the little pack that they had, and then they would maybe send out one lurker at like a prime time. But I feel like they've lost that sense of late round timing, and maybe the little like scout that used to be effective for ENCE is no longer finding its way. And I think that the biggest red flag about ENCE's early performances was just the flat out fact that at Katowice, Glaive was overperforming like a motherfucker. Like that dude was fragging out of his mind in aggressive positions where he is not necessarily even set up to be that guy. It's just that I assume because he was trying to get this ENCE team all in order as fast as possible, he was putting in as many hours as he possibly could. And at Katowice, he performed incredibly well. And then at Pro League itself, like Glaive is one of the worst rated players at this entire event. I think he's got like a 0.8 something rating overall, but in terms of T sides, he's just not finding those entries that he used to. On T side, okay, he has a 0.83 rating for this event, and I remember at Kato specifically, like he had above a 1.0 rating. Like he was definitely performing like he should be there in terms of fragging potential, and that has fallen by the wayside. And it's like how quickly this team falls apart if Glaive isn't just fragging out like an average CS2 professional.
The problem with this team is very simple, which is you locked into this crazy 12-hour span where you had to make a roster for the RMR. You got to the RMR, already fucking sick. Yeah, then, or maybe you even had the RMR spot. I can't remember which it was, maybe from 9. I can't remember which it was, right? And then you qualified to the major, right? You just accessed millions of dollars. Then you decided, But in the meantime, we had that fluky little kind of ETSE run. Keep the team. That's the mistake right there. It's okay. You had a couple of events. It didn't work out. You had the major. That didn't work out either. You got the millions. You already did all that stuff. You got through the early period. You had the little run. So here's what you do. Take the lessons and then move on. So I actually think the most obvious move, you're not cutting Glaive. You didn't sign him to cut him after this time. You didn't sign him to make an all-Polish team. The reason you wouldn't sign 9, aside from Maui's joke, is because 9 will never be a great team. Like, they won't be what even ENCE want you to be. Like, they'll just be an all right team that can hang around bottom of majors like all these little fucking bombs that I don't care about, that cheer like they've won the major when they fucking fluke the 2-2 game. I don't give a shit about that. So let's assume when you're keeping Glaive. Here's the good news. The pieces are here to very quickly make this team pretty good. Like, the obvious angle for Glaive is this. Memes aside, every IGL needs a certain type of personnel. There is no even my boy Carrigan, I've made it sound like he can have any players. He can't literally, guys. Like, spoiler, you think if you give Carrigan this team, he's going to do loads of amazing things? He might find a way to do something, like he'd probably use Hades in a different way, but even he's not going to, like, work miracles. Like, he still needs players. He still needs his type of players. And you know what? He needs players that, like, fit his style of calling. So I wouldn't abandon Glaive just yet. I'm taking it for the IGL side. He's not fragging that well. I also think, by the way, tell you what the biggest, coolest part of bringing the 9 players over is. I wondered, is it just because he's in dogshit 9 and they play online and the odd LAN that Hades looks good now? You know what? Hades has learned the lessons that he couldn't when he got kicked from ENCE the first time. He actually is a pretty good AWPer now. Look, he's way more in that Nork range than he is, and like, at best he could be a Sun Piers. He's not going to ever be a super stud AWPer, but he's good. Tell you what, he does work. He can do your fragging. So the problem is, if you think about it, Glaive, Hades, there's an AWPer and IGL. It's not a bad start for a team. Then you look at the others, like DH right now sucks, but I also, as far as I know, think he doesn't have his roles, and he's sort of been a bit pushed to the back in the team for whatever reasons. Could be the coach, could be the, who the fuck knows? I'm not even going to speculate. I don't know that one. So for that one, if he has to play it the way he is now, just move on. If you can find a way to rehabilitate him and change his spots, do it immediately, because it's not working right now as it is. The other 2 were the ones that, quite frankly, were also players I used to just look at in the other team and be like, this is why I don't ever believe in 9. But you know what? Of the 2 of them, I'll give Kyler the credit. Actually, I do think he was decent at the major. I think he can frag. He's got some firepower. So if we're assuming he's going to be sort of a lurk type player in this team, and we're going to keep those 3, can't we just bring in some... You've just got millions of dollars from selling the players to Falcons and to HEROIC, and you've got the fucking millions of dollars from the major. I'm not saying reinvest it all. You're an org. I get it. You want to make money. You're not one with massive investment. Can't we spend a little bit, though? Like I just said it earlier, pick which one of the 2 you're kicking out of those, right? If you're kicking out Goofy, bring XANTARES in. There you go. This is an instant signing. That's some a snap call. By the way, pay him 30k a month, whatever it takes. Get him in the team. Give Glaive XANTARES, then we'll see what his T-sides are like. If you're kicking out, like, the other way around, if you want to kick out Kyler, bring blameF in. Let him... By the way, he's already played with Glaive as well. I've seen him frag with Glaive. Look, you might go, maybe Glaive doesn't want to play him. Does Glaive want to fucking suck dick with 4 Polish guys and do nothing? You know what I mean? Glaive's a winner, mate. He'll take what he has to do at that point in time. So also, I think that's an obvious one. And so up the fragging. Just up the fragging and bring me in 1-star rifler in whichever role you want, aggressive, defensive. Bring me a star rifler. Keep Glaive and Hades. We can turn this around. Now, look, it's not like the heroic one. We're not one move away from going amazingly. But at the end of the day, we are ENCE. We're not G2 and Vitality. I'm never going to put the status onto ENCE the org and Huxley the player and Glaive the player as I do G2 and Huxley. You have Monacy, mate. You're G2. So I actually think they are in a terrible state right now, Paladin. Spoiler, I made the joke. The reason I've laughed when he was talking about how they can't win games is I had one of the most bonkers rates in betting you will ever see in any sample size over like 15 bets made. And do you know why I lost loads of bets in the last like week? Because I bet way too many times on ENCE and Falcons, mate. And those 2 teams just took me to the fucking sewers with Master Splinter down there. It was toxic, radioactive shit. That was it. And so, mate, that was a nightmare. Like, all the great work I did, they just took and threw it in the fucking toilet. Shout out to all players to ever be in ENCE, apparently. You're just all cunts. Brilliant. Cheers.
Yeah, I was actually doing the same thing throughout this week of Pro
League. Because they always had bag of rods. It was looking good.
With my sponsor, with my sponsor, just doing stuff for them, and it was just like, oh my god, this is how I lose it all. This is how everybody thinks I'm fraudulent, even though things are going so well in the first like two groups of it, in two groups of Pro League. Yeah.
Right. Okay. What is yours then, Mo? What is your ugly point?
Mine is it's a bit of a repeat, but it's kind of what I said before. It's kind of what I said, but okay. So last Snake and Banter, I did bring up this Kai situation. I kind of was like, okay, I just want to revisit the topic with a different lens here. Okay, so basically, last time around, I was talking about like I watched Kai demos already. I knew he was bad. We had yet to see him by the time that episode was being recorded in Pro League, but now we have. The dude's terrible. Like the dude's garbage, like hot garbage. Like please do not let this guy anywhere near a tier 1 roster within the next 6 months at bare minimum. Like Kai was a detrimental force to Furia, and the reason I bring it up as ugly is like it brings me back to this idea with Furia, which is like this team is wasting their own time. They're wasting their players' primes. They're wasting the fact that they spent so much money on a Fallen buyout for $700,000. Like what is going on here with what's I also think like one thing that kind of pissed me off and made it an ugly point once again is the way that like some people were saying like, okay, so I would bring this up, the fact that Kai was bad, and then I would say like it's also such a disingenuous remark from Fallen to say about Kai that he has a lot of potential and the players want to see what's going on here, because then it takes so much burden off of the org, which is really who's at blame here for bringing this guy in, for not spending bucks to bring somebody onto K-Serato's roster when K-Serato is still a top 10 rifler in the world. He's still a top 20 player despite Kassad, by the way, when we brought that up before on a hot take point made, if people are watching all these shows, Kassad said no, K-Serato's not a top 20. He brought that back. He's like admit like K-Serato is a top 20 player. He's
Which,
still one of the best riflers in the world.
It's history making that Kassad didn't double down. Like he is the most notorious double down of all time.
Yes, at ESL Pro League in the group stage, without even making it to the playoffs, K-Serato was a top 5 rated player. Yes. Every single person around him, even the people like 20 people below him, practically speaking, almost everybody beneath him in the next like 6, 7, 8 rankings, all made playoffs, like on winning rosters essentially. But no, K-Serato doesn't make it. They're wasting his prime. It's the same kind of conversation that I was having about Nafany wasting the prime of Shiro and Axile. We saw what happened. Axile's prime hasn't really lasted, has it? And I don't know if K-Serato's is either. He seems to have a little bit better longevity than someone like Axile, but the maintenance on this guy must be insane for what he's putting out in the server. And if I have to see Kai play another damn tournament with this Furia roster, then I am just going, like, it's full frontal with the offensive force that I have to take on Furia, the organization, because it is purely wasting his time. We know that your players are in contract jail as it is on Furia, but now at this point, it's like, why even rub it in their faces too? Because they have nothing that they can do about this. If you're going to bring in Kai once again, who is, by the way, in terms of rating, one of the worst. Kai had a 0.85 rating at ESL Pro League, and he got to farm Bad News Kangaroos. Like, this is so infuriating that he got to have a 1.5 rating. He still was in the bottom 10 or 15 of players at all of ESL Pro League, and yet I just need Furia to pull the trigger on somebody. As soon as Pain knew that they couldn't get Nissim for another event because the buyout was too high, they went and got somebody else that they had faith in, this Snow guy from Case. It's like, Furia, you need to expend any resources whatsoever and get somebody on this team that isn't a pure rookie. You need to actually make some kind of signing, because to see K-Serato with practically nothing to his name after all this time. And I don't actually need you to blow up the roster. I get it. I get it. Like, I don't think you're actually making as much as people probably assume you are. And maybe you're also trying to walk away with some semblance of profits too. I'm okay with, I'll probably even go as farther than most people. I'll say, keep Fallen, keep Cello, keep Yuri, keep K-Serato. Just give me a new coach who has bright and fresh perspectives, and give me someone that can play any roles. It can be any roles, because you know what you have in Cello? You have an underperforming anchor rifler that never wanted to be an anchor. When he was incredible on Imperial, he was actually playing the active rotator rifler positions. And so if you can just, you could leave him in those anchor spots, but you could also just find an anchor, and you don't have to worry. This conversation about roles does not need to happen. You find literally any rifler in the tier 2 Brazilian space that has shown anything at all against higher level opposition, and you will have a better roster than you have now. You just have to commit to it, because Kai, they will not be committing to that guy. There's no chance that they're going to be committing to him, because he was just a stand-in from the academy level team. And I also think it's a really bad faith point or side to take to say, oh, this doesn't matter for Furia, he's just a stand-in. Brolin was a stand-in for Maus. The word stand-in in esports does not mean mean. He is just going to go away regardless, and you need to throw this time away. Cloud9 are going to, through their due diligence, they're not just getting needless stand-ins. They're pulling out of tournaments so that they can find a better roster and hopefully assemble something that on the other end of it is going to be better. But right now, Furia, they're wasting everybody's time. Queserado is still traveling, putting up great numbers, and at this point, it's just spitting in the faces of Brazilian fans at this point. And I'm like, and some people are actually saying like, I just am so against Brazilians. If anything, I'm for them. I want them to have a good team. I want Queserado to play with someone who's not going to bot out with a 0.85 rating. I'll give me somebody who's been putting up a 1.09 in tier 2 Brazilian CS, and he will be better than Kai. He will be better than Kai. Like I'm so done with this lineup right now until they get a real fifth. And I'm just honestly, I'm getting to the point where it's getting like me enraged because so many people are just seeing like the disdain I have for Furia signing Skulls, or not Furia signing Kai or using him as a stand-in, and they're saying that I'm like against Brazil when I have no ill will towards Brazil whatsoever. I like that the Brazilian scene is as vibrant as it is with all these teams popping up that are as strong as they have been. It's just that this Furia roster cannot go on with Kai, or I'm just like, I just can't watch them anymore either.
I think it's a big indictment on the academy. Whoever was looking at the academy roster and looking to the specific player to pick out, the fact that they picked him out of all of the players that they've had across this tenure that the academy has existed is pretty insane. I mean, I'm looking at some of the players that they've had at one point. They had Nissim, they had Decenty, the star anchor on Imperial now. You know, they had Kawes as well, who I think is a pretty solid rifler off of Pain. You've decided to look past all of these names to pick this guy, which is absolutely bonkers to me. But yeah, I as a whole, I've kind of just lost all faith in Furia as an organization to be considered as like the top dog within Brazil. You know, you look towards teams like Navi or teams like G2 or FaZe or Vitality, where they have the sort of aura around their specific spheres that they can command and grab whichever player that they choose and kind of fit them into their system and kind of work accordingly. I mean, I could look to potentially like Liquid in America and maybe Complexity as well, to some of those like younger stars. Furia is that team in Brazil, and it should be that way every single time. Every report that I've been seeing within the Dust 2 sphere of like the reports of like Brazilian teams making moves, it is Pain that's making moves. Teams like Red Canids, Fluxo, these are rosters that should never have any skin in the game for top level Brazilian rosters when Furia should be involved in the conversation. The fact that, you know, Snow was able to go pretty much. He was actually about to go to wild card. I don't know if you guys know how low tier wild card is on the totem pole within North America. They're like the 8th or 9th best team in North America, period. These guys have zero pulling power, and the fact that they were in a bidding war with Pain is absolutely insane to me. That Fury was not even remotely in that conversation with that player. So to me, it feels like Furia have lost their luster as a premier organization, even with pedigreed players like Furia and like Fallen. There is absolutely just nothing that I don't even think it's like a good move nowadays for some of these players to go to this roster because of how dysfunctional it is. I can't tell you how many times that I just feel like these players don't care anymore. Like I don't see that same fire in players like Yuri's eyes anymore. Cello is not nearly as animated as he used to be when I look to him on teams like Imperial. It just feels like it is, again, just wasting everybody's time, and we're just going to continue to spin our wheels about some of the best riflers in Brazil and just say what if instead of what can be.
If Queserado doesn't leave Furia, then I'm not going to talk to him anymore.
Okay.
It's a straight fire reference.
I can't believe. Also, I can't believe Kassan was even right that if he doesn't join Liquid, he's ruined his career. Like his career is. I can't believe that. I can't believe that take. I can't believe. Okay.
And also, by the way, spoiler. I told everyone to hold on that TL. Now imagine him instead of Scholes' position in Team
Oh
Liquid.
my god,
Bro, they'd
my
be
God.
feasting right now. That team would actually win. They've won every game. They'd have won every series they played so far.
They're a top 5 team. They're a top 5 team with
so,
that.
okay,
Yeah.
don't think about that one though. Put that out your mind. That can't happen. It never could happen. There was no timeline. Even Doctor Strange couldn't have found a world in which that happened. I'll tell you what the saddest thing right now is if you were to talk to Furia, I actually bet I can guess as to why they don't sign these other players. Now, look, I have to first of all remove the thing that will make me fucking like MK Ultra trigger into a death spiral, which is they did have loads of money for a buyout. They signed Fallen with it. So if I pretend they didn't sign him for 700k, obviously what they're going to tell you is, like everyone else in the scene, you can't sign the players you want. You want Insane, but MIBR's a real org. They're not going to sell him for cheap. You want Big Azera, Payne's going to charge like, they charge 600k for Skulls. They're going to charge us like 600. They're going to go, you can't do it. So assuming, right, I can't go back in time, so I can't unsign Fallen, right? Obviously, at this point in time, you can't get the players we want, right? Do you know why that is so fucking rich? That's what Furia did to all the other orgs. Like when MIBR were the top dogs and they wanted the Furia players, they couldn't sign them because apparently the buyout's more than God, the contract's longer than you will be alive, and then supposedly, I've told this story before because fuck Furia after the way they treated me. I'll just say this, I've heard one of them literally said he was going to join MIBR and then called up MIBR crying on the phone saying I can't do it, which all I'll say is this, yeah, he could say there's some like they got to him emotionally. My joke would be, it's like the old simple joke of when he signed that contract with Na'Vi like 5 years ago. It's like, was there an AK-47 pointing off the screen? Like, that's the obvious thing you want to know at that point in time, because like, why can't people ever leave these teams? So I tell you what, you benefit from that, Furia. You got to keep all those players in that team. You got to keep Keserato, Yuri, maybe even Art. I don't know if he was ever on the table or not, but you got to keep these players that everyone wanted. By the way, it turns out it wasn't even the scenario that like you kicked Henny. It turns out you could have kept him too. You could have had all 4 of those players right now and you could have been the ones that we'd be talking about right now, get the 5th and you're in cooking. Instead, you've got nothing. You've got like Keserato and the memory of Yuri that occasionally comes against very bad teams. So my biggest problem is, I'll just put it this way. 1, Maui made a Freudian slip, but I'll tell you what, even Maui would take Skulls for fucking Kai instantly. He'd snap at me that fucking deal. So that was even like almost like his brain trying to tell him Skulls is not complete trash. And then also, look, if you can actually do fantasy football, obviously we're signing Insani tomorrow and we're cooking with him and Keserato. They would murder teams, even with a dodgy IGL. Even Fallen could IGL them, for fuck's sake. And then lastly, I'll just make this point. When you make a bunch of analytical points and you watch a team lose to anyone and everyone in the server, and then someone goes, you're obviously just biased against Brazilians. Here's what you say. Yes, and so what? And do you have a point? Those are the 3 things you say. Because at the end, they still haven't made a single point against what you just said. You know what? I am biased against Brazilians. And Furia sucks dick. How you like them apples? So you can't do anything about either of them, can you? You can't do anything about me. I'm going to be here the whole fucking time, homie. And then you can't do shit about Furia either. So at that point in time, move on. You know what? You don't have to keep telling me I am. I think I've proven it. So all good. Don't worry about me. So I think it's fucking insane, because the obvious problem here is this. The actual real nightmare scenario is, what if actually one day the move we want happens? What if Keserato does leave? There's nothing left. You've let you used to have at one point in time with those players I referenced in the earlier core in 2020, you had like essentially a house with all sorts of assets and fucking wings to it. Now it's a broken down old house. And if this fucking guy leaves, there's nothing. In fact, the joke is, if Keserato left, you wouldn't want Insani to join this team. You'd want other people to go to MIBR and join Insani at that point in time. Or you'd want them all to go to Pain, even though Pain's a worse org, they wouldn't do it in theory. So I think Furia is they're in an impossible mess. There's no way out of it. There's no way out.
One thing also I want to bring up is just kind of like for my own like just stroke my own ego here, is also like this cello stuff. Like when they brought on Fallen, I was kind of like, if he takes the IGL role away from Art, maybe that'll work out because I just felt like the style of calling for Fallen was better for Imperial than Art was for Fury at the time. But I also was like, I don't know why you needed Cello to take Drop's roles when like Cello played none of Drop's roles at all, and now Drop is doing well with MIBR. Like Cello's a solid anchor for MIBR now, and Fury, you could have had this because you were still developing the player. It's like Furia's eye for up and coming talent is so bad. You already did a good job there, like highlighting some of the people that slipped under their radar. Paladin that was on the academy team and that are now on literally higher ranked teams. Like the people, it's actually just flat out inexcusable and pretty hilarious actually when you look at some of the people that were under Fury Academy and now they're all on higher ranked teams. The fact that you said like Decenty, Drop, Cowes, and like that's so ridiculous. That's so ridiculous that now you've basically like the people that worked under you have realized, and thankfully, like God thank whoever told these guys, don't hold out for Furia to promote you to the real team. Just go to Imperial, go to MIBR, go to Pain, because you're going to have better and like more fruitful careers with actual chances at winning things. Even though it felt like Imperial was like a meme team, it really did. It felt like they were a meme team. They're now literally ranked higher in the HLTV rankings. Like how big is the egg right now on Furia's face that they let that happen? They've let go of the Brazilian scene. It's no longer the chokehold that they once had on it.
Luckily, though,
To me-
I'm not from the Americas, so fuck the whole region and continent.
Okay. Good one.
I
I'm
was gonna
circling
say
back there.
to me, I'm shocked that Gary and Akari are still in like power positions there. To me, you look at the results that they had. The one that was most shocking to me was the loss to Fours with Smooya on the roster and with the whole debacle that they've had. They got 13-0'd by them, which was just insane to see. But yeah, I think that they mentioned that Gary was like moving to like a different role, but he was still behind the team, regardless.
What's
so
he like
I
now?
don't
Like
necessarily-
designated check stealer. Oh, sorry, it's Fallen's milk. My bad.
Yeah, something like that. And I don't know. It's just baffling to me that I mean they say that changes are coming, but I mean nothing is really even tangibly looking like that, even behind the scenes, behind the players either.
Also, when they say that famous line, why you hate us? I think I've just elucidated all the reasons in massive amounts of details on hundreds of podcasts and with a lot of statistical analytical points. So listen, you know.
I get that. I've
to
started getting that.
English.
Unfortunately, I've started getting that so much now. It's like, why do you hate all Brazilians? And I'm like, it's just this Kai situation, and I think we're better people for skulls like K Serrato. Unfortunately, they couldn't get him.
Just say, why do you hate K Serrato? That's the obvious counter. Why do you hate K Serrato?
Why do you want him to suffer this fate?
Right. The last point of the show is my ugly point. And I actually have a very key angle to this that people haven't thought through. So as we were going live, the bracket dropped for EPL. And immediately you see there is obviously, because classic FaZe has to fuck up every fucking group stage of EPL. And then Na'Vi, the world champions, they fucked up their winners match. So you've ended up with the nightmare fuel bracket, where if FaZe wins, they play Na'Vi, a rematch of the major final. And if FaZe wins that, they play Vitality, a rematch of the major semi-final and the final of two blasts at the end of last year. So here's the point, though. The team that's on the hot seat is the one waiting in that bracket. It is Vitality. Because Vitality is going to play probably FaZe or Na'Vi and then potentially, like, let's say it could be Team Liquid, but probably Astralis, right? That's just to make the final. Think about what this year has been, guys. Katowice, 13th to 16th. PGL, top four, didn't lose to the winner. Lost to the second place team. If you somehow either lose in the quarterfinals or the semi-finals of Pro League, what have you got for this year? And are you ready? Here's why you are in so much trouble if you're Vitality. Because for this year, you have 3 of the top 11 rated players. And that's not including Apeks, who everyone thinks is a good IGL. I think is a good IGL. And I don't even think Messi's a bad player. So you are in so much hurt. Because I'll tell you what, that org does have mad aspirations. It's why they made all these massive moves after the last major. It's why they made all these like bold plays. It's why actually it's not good enough that Z was like good, but not like world. what are you going to have if you get halfway through a year and you've got 0 finals, 0 trophies? Like, remember, even after his sort of scuffed fucking major, I mean, he obviously murked this shit at group stage, Zero's still going to be like a top 3 to 4 player at the end of the year. He still has a chance if he goes crazy now. He's going to be at the tournament. He still has a chance to get like top 1 or 2. It's still plausible. It's still there on the table. So, like, what are we doing at this point in time? Because I've been told all those other years, just because Zero never had the help. You've got all sorts of help, mate. You've got a mega fucking lineup. So, like, this bracket, the team on the hot seat is Vitality, believe it or not. FaZe, if they don't make the final, guys, one, it's the least important of the lands, and they made every other final. If Na'Vi doesn't make it, look, people will meme on them, but they still won the major 2 events ago, like, and they didn't attend Chengdu. Like, what? I think Vitality's bracket, that's why I say ugly. It's not bad. They could win the bracket, by the way, and that'd be a great, like, sort of way to restore fit. Maybe they win Pro League. Could certainly happen. But if they don't, and by the way, right now, they've got a lot of reasons not to. They're going to face some of the hardest teams in the world. FaZe and Astralis are 2 of the best teams in World Counter-Strike right now, no matter what these group stage results tell you. So I think Vitality's in a really ugly spot, mate, because it's very rare I can say to someone, essentially, you must make the final. But, like, if they don't, what happens, mate? I think internally things collapse.
When I look at the top 10 teams right now, I look at G2 and Vitality as the ones that are, I still don't feel like they've proven to me all too much as to why they're there. When I look at when they play in these like bigger parts of the tournament, and I'm looking towards their like map pool. I don't necessarily feel like they have a real home right now, and that's a real worry to me. I feel as though Mezzy and Flames just don't feel comfortable in this roster. And I feel like this Vitality roster still feels a bit hodgepodge to me. I've not truly been sold on them. Even at the major, I had extreme doubts that they'd even clear Cloud9 in that quarterfinal. And I mean, they were able to do it, but I do just feel as though they're not that kind of domineering force that I look at them like I would look at them in previous years. I have pretty low expectations. I don't think they will win this quarterfinal. To be completely honest with you, it doesn't matter who shows up, whether it's FaZe or Na'Vi. I look at the performance that they had against the Sharks on Vertigo, and that was obviously just a very worrying sign to me that like players were just looking lost against a roster that isn't even 5th, 6th best Brazilian team right now. And so I feel pretty alarmed at Vitality. I don't think Zaiwu has nearly the kind of aura that I would look at other superstars right now. And it's still good enough to potentially say that he would be a top 3 or 4 team, top 3 or 4 player. But for right now, they're almost everything beyond maybe Apeks calling and maybe Spinks as well. I don't feel excited about this roster, like role for role or a map pool or results. Anywhere I look, I just feel as though there is a fallacy that I can kind of potentially just like walk you through and say that I don't really believe in this roster, and it's not all sunshine and roses.
Ooh, I feel like Paladin, you were kind of hard on them. I feel like they're still pretty good. They had a really bad Kato. Their run through the major was a bit of a cakewalk. I mean, before the event, I don't know if I tweeted this, but I definitely said it on stream many times. It's just that like Vitality is my team to win Pro League. I think they have, because of kind of the reasons that you actually said. I actually think that of all the teams that are like really good at studio environments, I feel like Zaiwu's a studio environment beast. Like he thrives in the studios. Like he was born into the studios. It feels like he's so good in them. So I feel like this is where they're gonna make their mark on the year. I like the angle that you come at this with though, Thorin, that they have to basically make it to the finals, because unfortunately, like if they play Fate, like it's kind of like it's a lot of teams are going to take themselves out of the tournament on their way to Vitality, and so you get a lot of time to prep. And I feel like if Apeks is worth his weight in anything, if like basically the analytical team behind Apex is worth anything, they should be able to study those games, pick them apart, come up with a game plan. And I feel like the kind of personnel that they have should be very adaptable. Like if they don't have a strong identity in terms of their play style, I think they have to be able to at least anti-strat at a high level, and that's something that they should definitely be able to come into this one with. For me, yeah, the two teams that have not proven themselves this year and really they need to either be looking at winning or be making changes are G2 and Vitality. I think that's incredibly fair to say, Paladin. And so for Vitality, to me, I look at this roadmap. There's no Spirit here, which you still have conveniently never played actually in a series, and you're gonna be playing at worst like FaZe or Na'Vi, and that's kind of like your grand finals. If you don't win that game, if you lose that game, well, then you lost to maybe the team that's eventually gonna win the tournament. But if you win that game in a weird way, you're gonna be the favorite going into every consecutive series. I don't even care if it's Maus in the grand finals. I think that you should see yourselves as the favorites going against a team like Maus, despite the fact that they've also been pretty strong themselves. But like this Vitality team right now, I still consider them to be one of the elite teams. Like if I look at HLTV world rankings, I actually feel like you give me a tournament today, I would probably rank them above G2 and unfortunately Spirit just don't enter enough tournaments, but I would still have them pretty safely as a top 5 team. And I just feel like kind of this is their tournament to lose in a weird way if they're able to get past the first round. And that's kind of a big if for them because FaZe or Na'Vi can do damage.
So basically, if they win their part of the bracket and they meet Astralis in the semi-finals, Zimu will just say to Stoughton, who'll be fragging like the MVP, like, you think the studio's your ally. I was born in it, molded by it. I didn't see a playoff bracket until I got into the No, whatever. Fucking, yeah, but apparently Yale's smirking, won't he? He'll bet the final boss.